Hi everyone, it's the second part of the Meeting Room podcast episode with Jeff Bianco, the president of DevPro company. In the previous part, we have discussed Jeff's career path, his approach to business. We talked about war in Ukraine and how we handle it, and now we are continuing our conversation. What is your vision for DevPro in 2 and maybe 5 years from now?
We're a much different company now than we were a year ago for the reasons we just discussed. We've now diversified location-wise. We're hiring actively in Latin America. I think we have about 70 people in Brazil, close to 100 overall in Latin America. So much more of a global company than we were before. I think a year and a half ago we were 98% Ukraine-based, and now we're about 50%. Part of that was by plan, by hiring in Latin America, and part of that was the result of the war and people moving. So I see us continuing to grow as an international company, and it helps our clients to have people in different time zones so they can pick. Do I want someone in Europe? Do I want someone in closer to the U.S. Time zone wise? It's forced us to do something that I wanted to do for the last 7 or 8 years, which is switch to English as a primary language for the company. Internally, up until very recently, chats would be in Russian. People in meetings would speak in Russian or Ukrainian when I wasn't in the room, and that doesn't help. I understand why, because not everyone's English is as good as the best people's English. So some people may not want to ask questions or may not understand everything. But now that we have contractors that don't speak Russian or Ukrainian, we have to do things in English, which helps improve everyone's English. And it's what our clients want to see as well. They'd rather, have people, improve their English. So throughout the last 25 years, people would ask me, "Oh, do you speak Russian or do you speak Ukrainian?" And I would joke, it's always easier for me to make 800 people learn English than for me to learn Russian or Ukrainian. But it's true that it's not just easier; it's better for the company if everyone improves their English and communicates in English. So, did I answer your question? Over the next 2 years, become a more international company. Continue to grow, diversify, both on where people are located, but also find, just more clients clients in different industries, different technologies, have a diversity, not be completely focused on, or have someone say, "Oh, DevPro, they're only good at this." I want people to say, DevPro's good at many things, but they're also able to learn and do new things. If you have a client that comes to you and says, "Okay, you do X and Y for me, but I have something new that's Z, can you do that?" If you say to the client, "No, not interested in Z, not going to do that," then it doesn't mean the client's no longer interested in that. They're going to look around, they're going to find someone that can do it, and they may like that other company better than they like you for X and Y. So, if you can do it, find a way to do it. That's been my attitude and approach. And then the next thing that happens is you do Z, whatever Z is, you figure it out, you learn it, and now you have something new to sell to other clients. So that's been a big part of kind of that opportunistic growth that I talked about earlier. We can hire people, we can train people, they learn how to do something, and then it's something new that can be sold, to new clients and continue to grow. So that's like 2 years. 5 years, it's really hard to look out that far, but I'd like to continue to grow. I'd like to have more Fortune 500 clients. Right now we have Starbucks and Global Payments as clients, and both of them are growing and they're happy with what we do. It shows we as a company can perform at the highest level internationally. These are not, we work with startups, and that's great. There's a lot of companies, a lot of smaller IT companies that work with startups. But to be able to work successfully with Fortune 500 companies, that's a just completely different level. We've shown we can do that, and then we want to take that experience to other Fortune 500 or enterprise clients and start working with them as well. So that's more of the 5-year plan, to focus on larger, more complex projects, and larger clients, and continue to grow the business.
Awesome. Yeah, and it feels like a win-win for everyone when clients' needs are covered more and more, and at the same time, like specialists at all levels can just maybe change specialties, learn something new, and just develop and grow. Just everything that you said from the very beginning, that you need to have those opportunities and the system in place for all of that. So that's amazing. Okay, and now we can move like to a next section. Let's say we've talked about a lot, but from the very first questions, I could feel that you have a slightly different and very interesting mindset. That's why I would like to just talk a little bit more about how you approach work. And we'll start with an interesting one. So if you had all the knowledge and all the opportunities that you have right now, and you would be to create a company from scratch, what would you do differently?
It's an interesting question, but it's also not just hypothetical, because I'm an entrepreneur, first, and I don't believe that that's something that's taught. That's something that you're born with. I mean, yes, you can learn it, but it's either inside you or it's not. I just in the last couple of years created 2 new businesses. One inside DevPro called DevPro Talent, which is a recruiting agency that helps mostly U.S. clients find staff in the U.S., but also in Latin America and in Europe, for direct hires mostly. Completely different type of business than the outsourcing business that we've been in, but I saw a need. We set up the structure, we hired people, and it's a successful small business, but it has nice synergies with DevPro. A lot of our clients use both businesses. I set up another business called Travel Confirm Aero Services, which buys and sells aviation parts. Completely different than IT, but we use the same. All the infrastructure that DevPro set up is borrowed by this business, like recruiting and HR and finance and things like that. So DevPro has been a little bit of an incubator for that business, and that business is successful as well. Not a huge business for me, but it's interesting, something I've been interested in. So I'm always looking for opportunities to set up something new, leverage what we've created, and and learn from things. When I set up a new business, we talked about this earlier. I don't have this long-term vision or goal. I say, let's try it and see what happens, and get things started. See if there's a market fit. See if I can hire good people that know that industry and can help it grow. And I've also set up many businesses. I can't even remember them all that have failed. You do all the same work, and you try to get out there, and it doesn't work out. The key to success, though, is stop those before they cost you too much. Fail fast, and then put those resources behind the ones that are working and are becoming successful. So what would I do differently? I think you need to. I think that the most important thing with starting a business is to have that initial client. You don't create a business with just the ideas in your head or in your colleagues' heads about, oh, this is what the market needs. Let's just go build this thing and then do a big launch and a big splash, and the market will love it. You don't know what the market wants if you're not, out there and actually doing it yourself. So if you have a first client, you can learn from that client. You can build something specifically for them that they need, with the idea that if they need something, then others will need the same thing. Not exactly the same, but you build whatever that is flexible enough that, that you can then slightly modify that product or that idea, to sell to others. And that first client, assuming they're paying their bills, they not only give you feedback, but they give you, the cash to support the business. And only once things are up and running and you see that there's a good fit, do you put more resources in it. I've never had a business where I've gone out and said, I'm going to go raise $5 million, $10 million, and then I'm going to build it with other people's money. It's always been, I've started it, I've self-funded it. If it doesn't work, I stop it. If it does work, reinvest into it, to make it larger and grow. And, and I've been able to run multiple businesses, simultaneously over the years. Right now, there's, 4 or 5 actually. Other times there's been 2 or 3. Some get sold, some get shut down, and then we just kind of continue and see how it goes.
Wow, that's really interesting, and especially what you said about that. Sometimes when you start a business, you just need to just go and do it. And I've heard a lot of opposite thoughts that there's going to be no successful business without a strategy. You need, to look at the risks. You need to, think about it thoroughly. And it feels like your approach is a bit different. Maybe it has this aspect of planning, but not so much. And from everything that you say, maybe you could just sum up the most important aspects for entrepreneurs who just want to try a new business and build it from scratch. Or maybe you have just this main principles that you can share.
Like I said earlier, entrepreneurship in my mind is innate. It's not learned. And what you describe, it sounds more like, oh, I took a class on how to be an entrepreneur, which is completely different from my approach. And what you're saying is exactly how you'd approach it if you took a class or you taught a class on entrepreneurship. Evaluate the market, create a business plan, do all these things, that's not entrepreneurship for me. That's, you can run a business, you can create a business, but that's not an entrepreneur. Not every person that has a business is an entrepreneur, in my opinion. So, I have a different risk tolerance than other people because, I realize I'll take a step back. I'll go back 20 years, and I, created my first software company that I ended up selling. It was called Graphic Corp. It was sold to a company called Corel, makers of Corel Draw and WordPerfect, and they bought the clip art company. And I said, wow, I'm 30 years old and I just sold my first company and I got so lucky. That could never happen again. I've had my once in a lifetime opportunity to build a business. And then I started another business. It was called Custom CD. I ended up growing that, sold that to another public company called Digital River, and that was in 2007. First one I sold in 99, next one in 2007. And I was like, wait, so I just did the same thing again that I did the first time. Maybe it's not luck. Maybe I didn't just, hit the lottery. Maybe I actually am doing something right here. So I'll try to do it again and build, the reason that DevPro has a corporate name of actually Travel Confirm Inc. Is because I wanted to create a travel-related business building software to track hotel and airline airfare pricing. I did that, and it didn't work. And instead of just shutting it down, I said, I've hired these developers. Let's just change the name to DevPro and then do the outsourcing business. So, not everything that I try works, but my failures have been shorter term and less expensive than the successes have been, long term and more profitable. So I realized over the years that I've got a pretty good instinct on these things, and I can take chances. I'm not always right, but I can think of 2 instances in the last 10 years where, I've directly turned a failure into a success because of being in almost the right place at the right time. We worked with a client called, I actually won't mention it, it was a startup, but I won't say the name. They've ended up going out of business, but we built a team of people to work with that client. And then as they were failing, we stopped working with them. Then a company that's now our largest client approached us and said, we need to build this new product. And because we had built this other, and we need to do it quickly, can you hire, 45 people in the next 60 days or something like that to build this? And if we would have said, no, it'll take us 3 or 4 months to do that, they might have gone somewhere else. But instead, we had this team of people that, were available coming off another project that wasn't 45 people, but it was enough to get started, and we ended up growing it into our largest client. So, from that failure, a success came. And that's, to me, what entrepreneurship is to adapt and to, not treat failures as the end, but to look for the silver lining. And there have been many other times where, something goes wrong, but you end up, turning it around. And while you're crying about your failure on day 1, on day 10, or on, day 50, you're like, oh, that wasn't a failure. It evolved into something that became a success. So that's how I see it. I can't say I have advice to say, oh, you want to start a business, do this, this, and that. I remember once, many years ago, a friend of mine said to me, so how do I learn to become an entrepreneur? I said, you don't just learn to be one. You either are one or you're not. So I would not be a good person to teach a class on entrepreneurship. Let's just put it that way.
And actually, another insight that I'm getting from what you're saying right now is that sometimes you just need, not sometimes, but all the times actually, you just need to take your own place and just be yourself and do what you do the best, because we kind of came up with all of those roles and version of ourselves, and we look up to some people and we say, okay, I want to be like him, I'll try to do it like that. But sometimes you just need to kind of to look inside, what drives you, what you're really good at, what you like to do when you were a child, how did you start? And it has many answers as well. So sometimes you just don't need to do something that's not yours.
I had a client many years ago who said he wanted to start a business, and he said something like, oh, the accounting rules are changing in China, so I think it'll be a great opportunity, and I said to him, are you an accountant? No. Do you speak Chinese? No. But you like photography, right? Yes. So why are you looking at starting a business dealing with Chinese accounting? You should start a business dealing with photography, because you want to wake up in the morning or as you're going to sleep at night, you're not going to be thinking about Chinese accounting. You'll be thinking about your photography. And, you're going to be just playing around the internet, just Googling things related to photography. Or you're on Instagram, you're looking at different photography styles that people have. And that's what you should be doing, because that's what your passion is. If it's just a job because it's like, oh, it's a way to make money, maybe, you're not going to be driven by it, and you're not going to be successful ultimately. So I completely agree. You've got to look at what's interesting to you, what are you good at, what motivates you, and then whether it's you start your own business or you find a job somewhere. A lot of my friends, they went to university and then they got their first job just because you need a first job, whatever that is. And 20 years later, 25, actually 30 years later, they're doing the same thing in the same industry. And it was that because they loved that industry? No, it was their first job. So they got good at it. They started making a little bit more money. And then changing at that point was like, oh, if I change industries now, I will have to go back a step. I don't know some other industry, so I'll have to, take a step backwards in responsibility or compensation. I'm not going to do that. And now, 30 years later, they're doing something that maybe they like and they've learned to, to like and appreciate, but it's rarely their passion. They didn't start off that way because they wanted to. They just ended up there. And then they look back and they say, okay, is that really, did I have the most fulfilling life? Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But if you have an opportunity now to look at making a change, even if it's a step backwards temporarily, if you can, try it and see if you can go off in a different path.
Yeah, totally. And I don't know about like an American culture, but in past Soviet Union countries, there's been this mindset that comes from like parents and grandparents, like take a serious job, be a serious person, like find a job that pays. There's just a lot of those phrases that kind of got so much inside us that now it takes a lot of courage. Especially when you like grown up with a family, you have to pay bills and everything, and just it takes real courage to step back.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not saying everyone quit your job and go follow your passion. That doesn't make sense for most people. But a lot of people reach a career transition point where they say, okay, I need to leave this job for whatever reason. I could go find the same job at a similar company, or I can change what I'm doing. And I have a couple people that I'm helping or, mentoring or giving advice to or whatever it is, that have, that have tried through DevPro, to learn a new skill, to switch from being this type of specialist to a manager or a BA or project manager type role, because DevPro provides those opportunities in education and mentorship and things like that. So, I have no problem. I've learned this a long time ago that you hire someone, you train them to do their job, and they're doing a good job, but that job doesn't have unlimited potential. Sometimes, a job can only reach a certain plateau, and then people want to get a compensation increase, and they come and they say, oh, I've been here for the last X number of years, and I'd like to earn more. And I say, well, if you want to earn more, then you need to change. You can't just keep doing what you're doing because you've reached the top of that in that role. So, take some of the classes, study, learn, and then we'll give you an opportunity. If you can pass an interview, if you're, if you've learned and you can express yourself and you have organizational skills and whatever else, then you'll get a shot. It might be a step backwards in compensation. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes we keep the same compensation, even if the level would normally be lower, but someone has skills from a different domain. We might say, okay, we'll keep you the same or maybe down a little bit versus hiring someone from the very beginning at a lower level. And then quickly, those people that are experienced and skilled in another role will pick up the new thing faster, but it may be an opportunity to grow even higher. So they've reached a plateau in their current role, but then the new role, they have opportunities to grow. And it's, a little bit frustrating because then I have to find a replacement and then I have to train the replacement to get them up to speed. But that's part of the business, and part of what I find fulfilling is to help those people, adapt and grow and, be able to take care of their families, be able to have a nicer life. The disparity between compensations and opportunities in Ukraine, especially if you look back several years ago, between Ukraine and the U.S. was just so huge. Now, for IT roles, after COVID, you can work for a U.S. company if you're in Ukraine, and you can maybe not get exactly a U.S. compensation, but they had a Ukraine-based compensation, and there was not much they could do, beyond that, and the goals were also much lower. People didn't think they could grow beyond a certain level. Now the world's flattened, so to speak, and you can work for different companies. You can travel. You can expand your horizons in a way you couldn't when I started coming to Ukraine. And it's been great to see people just grow and adapt. Many of them, even before the war, immigrated to other countries. U.S., Germany, wherever, have a different style of life, and happy to support that, even if it means people leaving the company. If that's what their goal is, good for you, and I can only wish you luck.
That's really great. And while we are still on this topic, you've talked a lot about your approach to just your job, how you say things, and what inspires you the most in all of that?
As I've said, it's watching people grow, and seeing them evolve from, someone that was paralyzed almost to make a decision because they didn't know, what if I do this wrong, to someone that has self-confidence and, can become a leader and, really make an impact. That's certainly inspiring. One thing that I've enjoyed just over the years of growing the business personally is the new opportunities and the new challenges that come with, one set of challenges when you have 100 people, another set of challenges when you're growing close to 1,000 people. Learning to do public speaking was something that I was always scared of, like a lot of people are scared of. So I forced myself 6 years ago to give a presentation, to give a talk, and about something that was useful and meaningful to me. And I did that. I presented it in several different conferences, different places, and it was well received. It was positive, and it really helped me overcome fear of talking to large audiences, small audiences. Now it's normal, and it's helped me grow and evolve as a leader, as a manager, to understand how to communicate, how to organize my thoughts and get it across in small bites that people can digest and internalize. That was an interesting thing for my personal growth, and doing this interview, I've never done this before. It's also another challenge. It's as the company grows, to be able to express to a larger audience, kind of our background, our history, our goals. Someone's going to listen to this that have no idea who it is and be inspired by it, maybe decide to, take some of my advice along the way, or maybe say, oh, DevPro, I've never heard of them, but I'm going to look them up and maybe, want to work with them or something, or maybe want to work as a contractor employee, or maybe want DevPro to do our software development. Who knows? So in the next phase of my growth is I need to do more getting out there, meeting people, presenting to a larger audience, And this is my first step on that journey. So thank you.
Okay, that's awesome. I'm glad. Yeah, actually, the exchange of experience and thoughts is extremely powerful, and you can just never know where it's going to lead you. So it's so great to deal with challenges. And when it comes to that, when you have doubts and people who work for you have doubts, how do you motivate yourself and them as well to go extra mile?
It's an interesting question, but from a different perspective. I'm going to answer it a little bit differently. I'm a workaholic, and I'm. People tell me, "Oh, you're traveling, you're always available, 24/7, whatever," and that's true because I enjoy what I'm doing. So it's not work if it's, it's fun for me. It's a hobby. It's all those things combined. But it also, brings up, instead of motivation, I'm told it sometimes is demotivating to other people because they feel like, oh, if I want to be successful in the company, I have to do the same thing that Jeff does. I have to be available 24/7. I can't take time off. I can't, take, weekends off or vacation and just, decompress. So, I'm not going to change my style, but I don't tell people, oh, you need to do it just like me to be successful. That's not the answer that we have. Everyone has to, they have their own lives, they have their private lives, they have their hobby, they have their family, they have their kids, they have their spouses, partners, whatever. Spend the time with them that you need, but don't look at the job as like the only thing out there. It's only a piece of the overall. It's important. It's how you earn your living. That's fine, but don't. If you forsake the other parts, you're going to burn out. You're going to create yourself some problems. So you've got to find that balance, and don't look at me as a role model for that balance because I'm not. I understand that. So that's kind of how I'd answer that question. It's not really how you asked it, but find the balance, which frees your mind. If you're into yoga, if you're into hiking, you want to explore nature, all of that, do that so that when it's time for business, your head is clear and you can focus and do a good job.
Yeah, that's actually an excellent answer, and also a great example of thorough leadership. That's why maybe you could just share your thoughts or advice to people who are looking to become better leaders.
Listening is a big part of it. I discovered a long time ago that it's almost impossible to predict what someone will say in an answer to a question. You think you know someone, and you think you understand their background or their motivation, but many times you don't, and they approach the same problem from a different perspective, and you go, wow, that was a thoughtful response. It wasn't how I would respond. It's not how I look at the problem, but based on their knowledge and experience and background, it all makes perfect sense to them. And if you can listen and you can understand that, you don't go off, you don't go off on a tangent and say, how can this person be thinking that? They give you an answer, a short answer, and you're like, wow, how did they get to that point? That's so wrong. They don't understand it. And then you talk to them more directly. You ask them, okay, how did you come to that decision? They explain it. You go, oh, okay. I went from A to B, but they went from A to B to C to D to E and then back to B again, and we get to the same place. All right, that makes sense. You can't, people are people are a sum of their knowledge and background and experiences and childhoods and education and everything else. And if everyone's the same, it would be a very boring world. But because everyone's not the same, you can put people around you with different ways of looking at things, and they can bring a perspective that you didn't otherwise have, and you can learn from it. So that's a big part of what I've tried to do as a leader is learn, surround yourself with people that are not like you, exactly like you, because it brings different perspectives, and then listen and try to integrate those people's opinions, even if it goes counter to your inclination. So yes, I'm the boss, and yes, I can say this is the answer, this is what we're going to do. But many, many, many times I'll listen, I'll say, I have my opinion, I think I'm right, but hey, if I'm in a group of 4 people and the other 3 are telling me something different, fine, I'm going to go with their answer, even if I don't fully agree with it, and we'll see what happens, and many times I'm like, wow, I was wrong and they were right, and that's great. Other times, it turns out I was right, and then I try to get us back on track afterwards. But if you just come in and say, nope, I know best, this is the answer, not only will you miss opportunities, but you'll end up alienating those people, because if you surround yourself with smart, bright, competent leaders and managers and specialists and everyone else, and you don't give them an opportunity to show themselves, they're going to find other opportunities. The good people, the ones you don't want to lose, are the ones that have all those other opportunities. The bad people, the ones that don't, that you don't want to keep, they aren't ever going to leave because they don't have other opportunities. So if you don't allow the good ones to grow, they all leave and you're stuck with only the bad people. Not that they're bad people, but the less skilled or less motivated or less dynamic people will end up being left in your company. So you have to give people an opportunity to grow.
Yeah, and it seems like it has a lot to do with just this international environment. If I'm not mistaken, the DevPro has a presence in over 50 countries, and that's huge. And I think it's what you just said is a big part of how you manage the multicultural teams. And also their cultural differences. Do you have any other tricks on overcoming those difficulties and just managing those multicultural teams?
That's one of the big challenges we have going forward as we switch from a Ukraine-based company to a global company. Time zones, culture, just something we're dealing with now is holidays. In 50 different countries with 50 different holiday schedules, how do you manage all of that? And we just launched a policy in the last 2 days that we're it sounds strange, but we're getting rid of holidays. There are no more holidays. Instead, everyone has an increased vacation balance. So if there were 18 vacation days and 12 holidays as a standard, now there's 30 vacation days, or we call them rest days. And if you want to keep the same holiday schedule in your country, those 12 days, just request those as days off, no problem. You can have off Orthodox Christmas and Trinity and other Ukrainian holidays, Defender's Day, take those days off, no problem. Or you could be living in Germany but take off the U.S. holidays because you want to be off when your client is not working, and you want to be working when your client's working. Or you might decide certain holidays are important to you, others are not important, and you'd rather go for an extra week of vacation to Thailand because you worked through the normal holidays, 7 of the normal holidays. I think it makes total sense, and that's what we're implementing, and it gives people the freedom to adapt how they want, or they can just say, nope, I'm keeping all the normal holidays and I'm not going to utilize this. Fine. And we need to do that as a multi country, multi-region company. We can't just dictate to everyone, this is how you have to operate. It used to be, before COVID, everyone had to come to the office. Not everyone, but most people would work from an office. And then because of COVID, people working home, now we can hire, not just in the 3 cities we had offices, but we could start hiring everywhere in Ukraine, for instance. And then it no longer mattered, Ukraine or not Ukraine. We're hiring Ukrainians outside of Ukraine. We're hiring, Polish people in Poland and Argentinian people in Argentina. And, now we're prepared for much more diversity of languages, opinions, approaches to things. We're finding, that culturally people are not the same. People in Latin America look at life and work differently than people in Ukraine. They're stronger in certain areas. Maybe Ukrainians are stronger in other areas. But instead of saying, oh, we have to replicate the type of people we have in Ukraine, let's find exactly those type of people everywhere else, we say, no, we're going to find people that are good at what they're good at in those locations, and we'll adapt, and we'll make sure that the fit between the specialist and the client is good. And as long as that's the case, then everyone's happy. And I'm also, like I said, I'm going to Brazil because I've never been to Brazil, but I've got 70 people working there. I don't know, really what's different about Brazil and Brazilians and what, when I go on when I have these meetings, usually it'll be on a, Saturday afternoon, or it'll be maybe if it's during the week, it'll be in the evening. I want to hear people's story, their experience, how they got where they are in their career, or if they left Ukraine during the war, how they ended up in Vienna versus, versus Budapest versus somewhere else, what their motivations are, what their concerns are, what their goals are. If you're you're in Budapest now, I don't know if that's where you're living, but do you want to go back to Ukraine? Is that your goal, or is your goal to say, I'm now living somewhere in Europe? I was surprised to hear how many Ukrainians said, I'm going back as soon as I can. That it used to be, I thought that more people would want to, emigrate to Europe or the U.S., but I quickly learned that, no, that's where your family is, your culture. You like living there because even before the war, a lot of people could have moved if they wanted to move. It's possible to go somewhere, and people not moving showed that they wanted to stay there. And, even the ones that left during the war, many of them are saying, I'm going back as soon as I can.
Yeah, it actually even surprised me because I spent most of the time in Ukraine, and before the war I thought, I'm going to leave if anything starts. But I kind of rediscovered my values and what I really want from life. And the only reason I'm in Budapest now is because I'm waiting for my Starlink and Blue Yeti station to arrive, because it's kind of taking a bit long. So I'm definitely going back to Ukraine even now. So it's kind of you grow to it, to just feel your values. And when you live by them, it's actually very important to do that. And even your values are family and home and all of that, then sometimes living in Ukraine, even during the war, is the best that you can do for yourself to just stay productive and positive and just, deal with all the difficulties.
When the war started, or before the war, when we were telling people we recommended that they leave, we weren't telling them where to go. We could give advice or help in certain countries more than in others, but everyone has to find their own path. And if someone wants to go back, great. If someone wants to stay outside of Ukraine, fine. You know, we don't, I know other companies are trying to consolidate people in a certain location. Oh, you know, we used to be Kharkiv based and now we're going to Budapest. So, you know, everyone, if you want to work for us, you need to move to Budapest. I don't believe in that. You know, it's a big world out there. There's a lot of opportunities. And if you limit people by forcing them to do things that are unnatural for them, then they're going to leave. And like I said, the good ones leave because they have opportunities. The ones that don't feel they have opportunities, the less dynamic people, are going to end up being all that you have left, and that's not the best thing for the company. So, you know, we don't tell people where to go and what they have to do. You know, we support them in Bulgaria, Portugal, and Poland more than we'll support them in other countries because we can't have infrastructure in every country. But, you know, we can provide advice. There's a range of countries beyond those 3 European countries that we provide some help because we have more people in certain countries, but we have offices in those 3. And yeah, you know, good for you that you found, you know, you found a balance that allows you to stay in Ukraine even during the war because the positive aspects for you personally being there outweigh the negatives. You know, I can't complain about that. I think that's the right approach. Absolutely.
You've just watched or listened to the second part of the podcast episode with Bianco. We'll continue our conversation shortly and we'll talk about building a great remote, diverse team, and we'll cover Jeff's personal goals for the future. So stay tuned and we'll see you soon.